Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for February 25th through March 3rd of 2024. My name is Cam White, if you don't know me already. We have a lot to talk about this week. So before I begin, though, I just want to say thank you to all the people that gave me supportive comments of the video I posted on Thursday. It was very controversial. I lost a lot of followers because of it. However, it's something on my heart. I was very scared to be vulnerable to everybody. And of course, I'm putting a lot at risk saying these kind of things on an online platform. So of course, if you'd like to support me, please feel free to reach out for a consultation, buy the calendar, sign up for my Patreon where you're going to get early release, exclusive content, ask me anything, and we do a monthly overview at the end of the month each month. So consider supporting the channel. It really does help me out. Now, let's talk about that bingo card that Parker wrote up for my 2024 predictions. So far, it's looking good. Like I said, cyber attack. I just wanted to bring that up real quick because that was the specific word I used. Today is Thursday, and a bunch of outages went out with AT&T all across the country. Now, no one's saying it's a cyber attack. A lot of people are theorizing it, so I'm going to give myself a half a point. However, all of the things that I said that I thought would happen, I got like a half a point on all of them. So they weren't exactly what I was expecting, but we got really damn close. So that bingo card's looking good. And this week, we have more to add to the bingo card. So we're starting the week off with the moon ingressing into Libra. It will then make a trine to Pluto. Now, everyone online is making a big fuss about this being a void of moon, like a traditional Hellenistic void moon. If you're not familiar with what a void moon is, that is essentially when the moon is not making any further aspects until it leaves a zodiac sign. Now, I think with Hellenistic, it's like even if it's like pretty much like if he enters a new zodiac sign, it doesn't immediately make an aspect. It's still technically void. And so everyone's freaking out about like, oh, you shouldn't do anything. Void moons are bad. Realistically, void moons are fine for most things, to be honest with you. Read a book about it. Of course, do you want to start a business or anything along those lines? No, maybe not really. But honestly, it's just a good time to maybe not do anything or do things that maybe aren't that important. But either way, the moon is ingressing into Libra and it will make a trine to Pluto. And what I think is really interesting about this is there's a lot of power in relationships. The video I put out last Thursday with my controversial topic, reading the comments, it is really powerful relating to people who can share a similar view with you, you know, as we've been outcasted, or if you've been outcasted from something, or, you know, you were shunned away from a group or something like that. When you find other people that you can reconcile with that with, it creates a lot of power. And I like this moon in Libra trining Pluto for, again, finding power in relationships. Aquarius is a dual-bodied sign. I think that's really important to understand. It's not just one thing, it is two things. And that could be, I don't really like to call it the good or the bad, but when it comes to the moon going into Libra, our emotions, our body are really connected to other people, to relationships. And when it's trining Pluto, a trine is a harmonious aspect that is two planets working together. And I just look at the moon trining Pluto as like a great time to really empower a lot of relationships and feel more empowered by them. But on Monday, we do have our first highlight, and that's going to be Mars making a square to Jupiter. Now, the best example for the Mars square Jupiter is, I believe this was in 2020, and I'm going to have to double check this. I'm almost like 100% positive that the Mars square Jupiter of 2020, when Mars was in Aries, squaring Jupiter in Capricorn, was the Beirut explosion. If you don't remember, a firework, like I think it was like, it wasn't a firework factory, but it was like a dock, like a shipping dock that had a bunch of fireworks that just blew up, and it looked like an atomic bomb went off there. That was a Mars square Jupiter. It's an explosive transit. Now, when you look at Mars in Aquarius and there's a ruffling of the feathers of group dynamics and of people, Mars is in the superior position making a square to Jupiter. Jupiter's in Taurus. Jupiter's about, again, expansion, abundance, hope, good faith, things like that. And it's in the sign of material wealth, stability, security. And I look at Mars squaring Jupiter as, again, and this is something I'm going to talk about more, I believe, next week when Mars squares Uranus. I believe that will be more disruptive when it comes to groups of people like protesters or rioters or whatever it is. But Mars squaring Jupiter just seems like a kind of an explosive moment. Maybe you're going against the grain. Maybe you are doing things in your own hostile way, and that might kind of burst the bubble. For example, I say some controversial things, and I will pay the consequences for that. And that is what it is. I made the choice that I did. And I made that choice many years ago when I started saying what it is that I wanted to say and not being afraid to say what I want to say. And there are consequences that comes with that, but there is freedom that comes with it. And so I just look at Mars squaring Jupiter as a bubble might pop. There's going to be some sort of again, our actions and our frustrations are not in alignment with what our higher like beliefs are. And so it's kind of like, are you doing the thing that you actually like believe in? Like, are you doing something because you think that way, or are you doing something because you believe that way? And when I look at squares, it's like, okay, these two planets aren't necessarily on the same page with things. They're not at odds, right? That's an opposition. They're just not on the same page. There's a disagreement. You could probably say hostility. And again, if Jupiter and Taurus is like, all right, what are the things I truly value? What are the things that I truly believe in that will give me more security and stability? And why am I doing things that go against that? What am I doing that might jeopardize that? And I think as Mars squares Jupiter, I think it will be easy to kind of blow up, like literally and figuratively, in terms of reactions to other people, in terms of that might even just be like you're on the road and someone cuts you off and it's just that, what is it, the straw that broke the camel's back that kind of makes you freak out. So do your best to chill out on Monday when it comes to like just explosive actions. We get to Tuesday, and on Tuesday we will have the moon, while it's in Libra, making a trine to Mars and Venus, and then it will conjoin the south node. So as the moon's on the south, or I should say as the moon's trining Mars and Venus, again, this is connecting more with relationships. I really do like Mars and Venus together in the same sign because it's kind of like, it's drama, but it's fun. It's connection, but it's a lot of action. You know, Mars and Venus is very like getting people who might, how would I, like, I'm trying to think of an analogy for this. Like what comes to my mind is like playing a game, like going golfing with the boys, and you guys are all kind of mean to each other. You're making fun of each other. You're pulling pranks on each other, but you're all having a good time at the same time. And the moon in Libra is there. There's a lot of connection and relating to other people, but it's Mars and Venus in Aquarius. Like maybe you and the boys need to go out for a hike and go out for, a little bit of an adventure. But the moon will conjoin the south node. So I think that plays a different role. Like the moon conjoining the south node is number one, I think, like a releasing of relationships, right? It is like relationships are draining and exhausting, and that maybe we need to be like less emphasized on relationships, especially things like peace and balance. Like I've talked a lot about this in terms of the Israel-Palestine stuff is like peace was never an option with the south node in Libra. It's war. That's the north node in Aries. People are hungry. And when I say people, I don't mean like necessarily you. I know we're not hungry for war, but there's this urge in this direction to go more towards war and less towards diplomacy. And so I look at the moon making this trine to Mars and Venus, then conjoining the south node as kind of interesting because the moon trining Mars and Venus is making a connection of, hey, I'm connecting with people. It's all good times. Here are my people. And then the moon conjoins the south node where it's like, well, maybe they weren't actually my friends anyway. So it's kind of hard to delineate and decipher of like, okay, well, how does that look like in everybody's life? Of course, number one, it's going to be the most important thing is going to be what, Aquarius and Libra, what houses they rule in your birth chart. But I think as the moon does trine Mars and then trine Venus, there is this kind of like, I think, connecting more with other people while at the same time not relying on other people, not relying on every single relationship. I've talked a lot about this with the Leo Aquarius axis. Like people are stronger in numbers, but it does take strong individuals to make up a strong team of people. Like think of like Navy SEALs, for example. They're not a bunch of weak individuals that all together make them very, very strong. That might be more of like a certain, I don't want to say like the Marines are bad or like the Army's bad or anything like that. But it's kind of like, yeah, if you get, it's like that argument online where it's like, if 300 5-year-olds were attacking you, could you destroy them essentially? There is some power in that. But again, when it does come to a group of people, you do need strong individuals in order to make up a strong group dynamic. So anyway, I just look at Tuesday as kind of interesting because there's a story that's being told that there's a lot of connection with relationships. And then there's a story immediately after that saying, well, you're kind of moving on from relationships. The only other way I would look at that is the South Node does bring things back from the past. So this could be bringing back an old friend or someone that you haven't spoken to in a long time. So be on the lookout for that. Then we get to Wednesday, and Wednesday's the highlight of the week. We have a lot going on Wednesday, and this is when we want to pull up the bingo card. So Parker, pull up the bingo card. So shout out Parker for all the amazing edits. You guys always say thank you to me, but not Parker. Maybe like one comment. Everyone say thank you to Parker. We have the Mercury Cazimi. We have the Mercury Saturn conjunction, and then we have the Saturn Cazimi. A lot of action going on right here. The reason I want to bring up the bingo card is one of my predictions was this looks like gaining some sort of a message from an authority figure that is not clear. That's essentially the way I want you to look at Wednesday. A Mercury Cazimi. Everyone gets all caught up on this word Cazimi and that it's like, what does it mean? It's too complicated. It's just when a planet conjoins the sun or the sun conjoins a planet. There you go. Cazimi, I think, translates roughly to like in the heart of, and that's what it means, like in the heart of the sun. When you get a Mercury Cazimi, it's kind of like either you have this refreshing idea, like a light bulb moment, or some sort of a big communication is happening. Some sort of, letter is sent to you or an important phone call or text or something like that. Now with the Saturn Cazimi, the way, and I talked about this last week, is like Saturn is now in new territory. We are now moving into the next decan of Pisces, where we had our challenges and our obstacles and our burdens since March of 2023, that again, Saturn going direct is like, all right, here's you being introduced to all your new problems. Saturn going retrograde is like, it's time to learn how to face all of those. Then Saturn going direct and moving forward is like, okay, you have grown up, you've done the Saturn thing, you've learned your lesson. Now we're just in that again. Now just with the second decan of Pisces. So now, again, we're being introduced to new areas of our life that we need to be disciplined in, or how we need to manage our discipline, how we need to take care of things. And the Saturn Cazimi is just kind of resetting that story. That's the easiest way to put it. But we also have Mercury conjoining Saturn, where Mercury is kind of like holding up a microphone to things. Mercury is the communicator. It is the messenger. And it's conjoining Saturn, the planet of authorities, the planet of fathers, the planet of, discipline, governments. And so the reason I want to bring up the bingo card is I would imagine we're going to hear something probably related to the government, corporations might be one thing. I'd be interested about the AI stuff. If you've seen some of the new AI stuff in terms of video, it is haunting. And I'm not the biggest, we need to pass legislation on everything kind of person, but that is terrifying. But also there's people out there that want to put a chip in their brain because Elon Musk is so based and heckin', red pilled. So I wonder if we hear anything about the AI stuff, like some sort of like, hey, we're going to pass this bill. And then of course, just like every other bill, it actually doesn't do anything. But I also wonder about aliens. Now, for whatever reason, there's this whole group of people in the world that are obsessed with the alien stuff. I get it. Where my position really comes in is like, there's probably aliens out there. The government's probably worked with them. How much of whatever's going on right now in the alien world and like the Senate talks and Congress and all that is actually real? I don't really believe it. It's hard for me to believe it given everything else that happens in that area of the country that it ends up being a lie. But part of me wonders if there's a conversation about the alien stuff. And the reason I think the alien stuff is really important is we saw Jupiter ingress into Pisces very, very early in 2022. And that was when we saw a lot of this alien stuff finally getting risen to like the public attention. And then when Saturn entered Pisces, that's when it was like the congressional hearings, the Senate hearings about aliens. So this Mercury-Saturn Cazimi, in my opinion, is a very big, like, I wonder if they talk about aliens or if they talk about, again, my bingo card was either aliens, but again, it's probably military stuff. I'm going to do my best to remember to post the link. If not, Parker, help me out here. In my 2024 prediction video, I posted a link to a Kim Iverson video where she's interviewing this guy who's been doing this for like a decade now, going over the missing Malaysian flight. And there's video of the flight going missing. And he breaks down how this cannot be faked and that this was a government drone and all of this other stuff. And I'd really recommend watching it because at first I thought I was like, oh, the Malaysian air flight, they probably lost pressure and then they probably just coasted until they ran out of, fuel and died. But after watching this video, I was like, it's really interesting that there was like a U.S. military satellite right exactly on top of that Malaysian airline, right as soon as it disappeared. And also we have this drone footage that came from the military, also following it at the same time. Really interesting stuff. So anyway, so let's revert what I just said into more of a personal stuff. There's going to be some sort of a clearing communication, some sort of a idea that comes up, some sort of a line of communication between you and someone else, probably an authority figure. But nothing's going to be clear. I talked about this full moon in Virgo being, it's like a lot of it's just realizing what you don't know. And I think that's fine. But I look at this as, Mercury is in Pisces. it's not a good time to be very like, oh, this is what makes sense and this is what doesn't. Mercury in Pisces is a lot better for having your mind being open to a lot more things. And I think as Mercury conjoins Saturn, this is kind of like the reality coming in of like, oh, well, what if my mind's kind of going here and there? Well, what's real? There's this kind of like constraint on that. And so this Mercury, Saturn, both Mercury, Cazimi, Saturn, Cazimi is a very like, just so many things kind of coming together where it's like, hey, this is very real, but you don't know what's going on. Like, for example, I think I've thought of recently, because of my 2024 prediction video, I've been thinking a lot about the missile crisis in Hawaii. I think it was in 2018. Everyone got a text of like, oh, nuclear bomb coming from North Korea, find cover. And like nothing happened. It's just very like, let's make everyone panic. And then, just a false alarm. We didn't mean that. I don't know if it'd be the exact same, but it seems very similar. And the way I'm trying to connect that is there's some sort of a line of communication that's very serious, but it actually doesn't make sense. And you're going to have more questions than answers. Also on Wednesday, we will have the moon ingress into Scorpio in square Pluto. So again, with the moon going into Scorpio, our emotions are very fraught. They're very distressed. Our bodies are feeling uncomfortable. We're very tired. We're very low energy. And it's squaring Pluto. It's kind of like the Pluto and Aquarius stuff. We all know what the Pluto and Aquarius has been. Again, I said this last week and I feel like I couldn't get the message clear enough. I don't hate people that have individual Aquarius placements. I don't think that's the deal. But there is a dark side to Aquarius, and that really is group dynamics and the like hive mind. And I look around and I don't see us all holding hands and singing Kumbaya. What I see is so much more divisiveness, and I see much more tyranny and control through technology, through social groups, through communication, through social structures. And that's my opinion on Pluto and Aquarius. That's why I have such a, people are like, why are you so mean about Aquarius? It's like, well, I'm not talking about your zodiac sign or your Venus or your Mars is in Aquarius. Like, that's not what I'm talking about here. But like in the bigger picture, we have Pluto and Aquarius. So we have like arguably the worst planet in that sign for the next 20 years. We will see the bad parts of Aquarius come to life for the next 20 years. So I think it's important to see it now. It's kind of like when you see a kid, like you ever seen a kid, like let's say they take their doll and they like rip the head off and they throw it in the fire. You're like, oh, that's going to be a really fucked up adult. That's how I want you to like look at Pluto and Aquarius. Like you see all these little things right now, just know it's going to get, it's going to turn into something else later. So then we get to Thursday, and on Thursday we have the Mercury-Jupiter sextile. I think this is when Hope comes through. Hope enters the chat. Mercury is in detriment, right? And this is, I can sometimes be a hater of Pisces stuff, but I do love Mercury in Pisces simply because it's such a great time to be open-minded and to not be fixated on things and just like let your mind explore. We don't have to have rigid ideas of how things work. We can be open-minded. We could be malleable. And so it's like Mercury can join Saturn. So it's like, ouch, that was harsh. And the Mercury sextiles Jupiter, where it's like, okay, well, here's the solution. Again, Jupiter and Taurus, let's go back to the basics. Let's get ourselves grounded. What do we value? What do we actually want? What are we grateful for? We need to practice more gratitude. I'm talking to myself right now, but I know I'm talking to you. What can we be grateful for? And then on Thursday, we got a lot of moon action. The moon will first trine Saturn, then it will go opposite Jupiter. It will then trine Mercury and square Mars. A lot of action going on. So the first thing is the moon trine Saturn. I think is the moon's in Scorpio. And again, we're feeling a lot more emotionally fraught and again, distressed. That moon trining Saturn is like, okay, I know what I have to do now. Like it's 2024. Have we developed better habits and, systems for navigating negative emotions? Like for me recently, it's just been the gym. Like every time I don't want to go to the gym, I still end up going. And I love it. Like I hate it the whole time, but then afterwards I feel so good that I did it, even though I didn't enjoy it the whole time. So it's like, what are the structures that you have in place that can help you navigate rough terrain emotionally? Activate those. And I look at the moon going opposite Jupiter after that trine to Saturn. Like the moon trine to Saturn is like, okay, I know what I got to do here. Like I know how to like take care of myself. The moon going opposite Jupiter is, again, things are at odds. Moon in Scorpio saying, oh, I need to feel comfort now. Like I'm really learning this about like diet and stuff like that. I shouldn't say I'm really learning about now. I've been learning about it for a long time, but it's just one of those things that's very in my head at this moment is like I use food for comfort. And I know a lot of people do. And we know that thing is bad, but we want to feel comfortable because we feel so uncomfortable. We want to escape ourselves. Like we use all these vices to escape being uncomfortable. And I look at that moon in Scorpio opposite Jupiter is like, are you going to choose a shitty thing to do to make yourself feel comfortable because you feel uncomfortable, even though you know that's not what's going to be best for you in the long run? That's like the moon in Scorpio opposite Jupiter in Taurus. Like you don't really value like eating a whole, this is what I used to do. You know what I used to do? This is so good too. Used to get either like a Philly cheesesteak sandwich from Domino's. It was gross. Or like a small barbecue chicken pizza from Domino's. And if you've ever had Domino's, they have, oh God, you can tell I haven't had a carb in a while. They had these brownies. They have these brownies, these brookies, and they come in 9. And I would eat a whole pizza and a whole box of those brookies to myself. And this was like in the pandemic. I would drink like whiskey and Sprite and fucking smoke a ton of fucking weed, just having a hell of a fucking time. Boy, I don't recommend eating that type of shit, but god damn, the brookies from Domino's are another level of good. But I ate like that because I was uncomfortable and I just wanted to feel comfort, and good sugary food to make me all fat did that. But I knew that wasn't what was best for me, and it ended up making me pre-diabetic and all that other stuff. And so I just look at the moon in Scorpio opposite Jupiter, is like, what do we actually value here? Like, can we be okay with being uncomfortable for the higher good? The moon then trines Mercury. What I love about the moon trining Mercury is Mercury in Aquarius is very like mental gymnastics, versus like Mercury in Pisces is more so of like delusion, but like delusion in a way that can work for you. It's like the moon's in Scorpio with Mercury and Pisces, like just say you don't need it. Why do you feel like you have to need it? Like find some mental way to like warp your thoughts and ideas to make it easier for you to go through what you're going through. Like it's all about mindset, right? But then the moon will make a square to Mars while it's in Scorpio, and that does look a little tough. The moon in Scorpio being resistant to Mars in Aquarius, like the moon in Scorpio squaring Mars in Aquarius is very like, it reminds me of Chicken Little. Like the sky is falling, and no one's really listening to you. There's kind of this like moon in Scorpio squaring Mars in Aquarius is very like going out on your own and going AWOL, taking your own path because no one's listening to you kind of a thing. Very emo kind of a vibe by the time we end Thursday. We get into Friday, and then the moon will square Venus very, very early in the morning, and then it goes opposite Uranus. So as the moon squares Venus, when I was a child, I had these two friends. I can't remember who these friends were to save my life, but I used to, this elementary school I used to go to, there was this fence, and next to this fence was this brick wall where they had like planters, and they had a fence above that too. But there was this part of the fence where like you could jump over the fence if you wanted to. And me and these two other boys, every day, I think it was every day for like either second or third grade, we stood by that gate and just talked about what we would do if we ran away. That's all we did. I think about that all the time. And, you know, it's like, I'm going to do this. We're like 7 or 8 or something like that. Like, we're not going to fucking do shit. We're going to like be lost in 5 seconds. But I look at the moon in Scorpio squaring Venus in Aquarius. It's kind of like, there's like the moon squaring Mars. It's kind of like, I need to run away. And then the moon squaring Venus is like, God, I kind of miss people. Like, I don't actually want to be alone. I look at the moon squaring Venus too is a disruption in relationships. It is kind of like having a lot of angst about people. You know, your emotions are hurt and you don't see eye to eye with these people. So you feel like you can't connect with them. So like, don't worry about like trying to connect with everybody on Friday, because I think that's going to be difficult. And then as the moon's in Scorpio, it will go opposite Uranus. There is a disruption in our emotions. There is again, it's like, for example, someone commented like, oh, I thought you were off smoking. I'm not really smoking weed at all. Like I haven't smoked weed in a really long time, but I'm smoking cigarettes. I've quit nicotine before. And I'll tell you this, it's 3 days of hell. You get out of that third day, you're pretty much in the clear. You just can't touch the hot stove again. And I look at the moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus and Taurus. It's like, it's day 2.5. Don't pick up the cigarette again. Like, don't do it. Like you're so close to it, the hell being over. So with the moon going opposite Uranus, there could be this disruption. But the other thing is, don't react. Don't just impulsively do something. Because you feel uncomfortable. Then on Friday, we also have the sun sextiling Jupiter. So again, the sun, our identity, our willpower, our energy, it's making a contact with Jupiter. I think there's an overall positive vibe on Friday. I think though it comes from the sun. Like the moon is our emotions, but the sun is kind of like, were we integral? Were we authentic? Were we real? Were we producing light for other people? And so I think, again, there's that sun sextile Jupiter throughout the day is very rewarding if you do the things that you should be doing and not fall into the trap of bad habits and repeating cycles. We get to Saturday, the moon's in Scorpio, making a trine to Neptune. It's every time I have the moon in Scorpio trining Neptune, it's just hard to not talk about like making up fake stories. Like anyone in a relationship can relate to this, whether you're a man or a woman. I'm just a man, so I only know my stories with women. But people can see in action that you're doing or think that you're doing, and because they are insecure, can make up a whole narrative and a story about what that was. And I look at the moon in Scorpio trining Neptune and Pisces very like, let's try not to make up stories. Let's try to not do that. You can confront things if you have like a thing to bring up, but like don't spiral essentially. And that only lasts for a minute because the moon will go into Sagittarius. There's a lot more freedom with the moon in Sagittarius. It's like, you're like, oh my God, are they doing this? And then they tell you, you're like, oh, like that's not bad. I actually enjoy that too, or something like that. So the moon goes into Sagittarius, a lot more positive, a lot more free. And yes, it makes a sextile to Pluto. That's cool, I guess. And then we get to Sunday. Sunday is when we're going to have the moon, while it's in Sagittarius, make a square to Saturn. It will then sextile Mars. It will then square Mercury and sextile Venus. So a lot of lunar stuff. Again, it's all over the place. So the moon squaring Saturn is saying no. Again, the moon in Sagittarius is like, it wants this freedom, it wants this adventure. We get a little bit of that Saturday night. Saturday night, moon's in Sag. We go out, we go crazy, we have fun. And then Sunday, the moon squaring Saturn is like, yeah, no, it's not happening. There's the only place we have to go is within ourselves, essentially. The grass is not greener on the other side, it's green where you water it. But it will sextile Mars. So as the moon makes that square to Saturn, it's like, okay, like I can't just run away from everything, but that moon in Sag sextiling Mars in Aquarius, it reminds me of it reminds me of like tactical tech hunting gear. Like I've been getting into a lot of tactical gear stuff lately, and it's amazing what technology is in that world. Like, you ever look through thermals? Thermals are terrifying. Night vision is terrifying. Like when you really understand how people use this shit. And I look at the moon in Sag sextiling Mars in Aquarius as like very like going rogue, going off the beaten path. Like again, doing what you can where you're at. Like for example, with the moon and Sag making a square to Saturn and Pisces, if you're lost in the woods, if you're genuinely lost, like typically it's a better idea to stay where you're at, unless like maybe you have an idea and maybe you can walk. But it's like if you want people to find you, you just need to stay put because otherwise you're not going to get found. And so it's like, all right, stay put, stay found. But that moon sextiling Mars in Aquarius is like, let's look around where we're at. Like, can we get a better identity of the land that we're at? Can we get a different perspective of where we're at? The moon sextiling Mars is energizing. And I think it's kind of like, all right, well, I want to go do this now. Well, I want to go do that. I can't, completely run away from things, but I can do other things that I want to do. The moon will then make a square to Mercury, though. And that is kind of the hard part, is like the moon, the moon sextiling Mars is like, I'm going to go off the beaten path. And then the moon squaring Mercury is like, no, you're fucking lost. Like, no, you don't actually know where you're going. The moon in Sag is very like, oh, like the trail just turns around this mountain and we'll be there. And then you get around the mountain and it's not there. And that's the moon squaring Mercury in Pisces is very like, yeah, we're lost. We're a little bit confused. We're walking in circles here. But the moon sextiles Venus immediately after that. Maybe it was just about the friends we made along the way. It's like a typical movie trope where it's like, a group of friends get lost and then they argue and then they become friends and stuff like that. Like Sunday's just very like harsh, good, harsh, good. That's how I want you to look at Sunday. But the other thing on Sunday is we have Venus squaring Uranus. Venus is fashion. Venus is design. Venus is connection and fun and Aquarius. She's squaring Uranus. There's disruption. I always look at like Venus squaring Uranus or Venus aspects to Uranus is always some weird fashion thing coming out, like weird new product or weird new thing that you see. Venus in Aquarius is again very like systematic. It's very it just reminds me of like eco-friendly, sustainability, like all of those buzzwords and stuff like that. and it's squaring Uranus, very disruptive. Like the thing that we have pleasure over, that we want to do, is the way that we do it is disruptive, or the action in itself is disruptive, or we have this disruptive impulse for desire. That's how I'd look at Venus squaring Uranus, but that is a big highlight of Sunday. And so it does sound a little fun to maybe do something a little bit different. Just don't get lost in the woods, because I don't know if anyone's going to find you. Then we get to next week. Mercury conjoins Neptune. I just got done on my Patreon explaining that, and I have a good story for Mercury conjoining Neptune. Mars squares Uranus. Boy, if there was a transit that talked about riots and disruption with people, that's it. We have the new moon in Pisces. We have Mercury in Aries. Pisces season's almost done. And we have Mercury sextiling Pluto as we have that. So let me know what your thoughts are about all this stuff in the comments below. Again, if you want to support the channel, get the calendar, guys. The calendar is so amazing. I literally use it all the time. I only try to push products and things that I actually like and want to use, and I use the calendar all the time. It's how I keep track of everything that's going on in my life with the astrology. Book a consultation, join the Patreon, and with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys. I'll see you next week.